The ethnic cleansing of Judaism in artworks. Earlier this year, the New York Times reviewed an impressive exhibit at the Frick Collection in New York City of the paintings of 15th century artist Piero della Francesca. The Frick exhibit was a rare opportunity for art lovers to see these 7 paintings in one location in the United States. The Times article rightfully praised the beauty and charm of della Francesca's artworks. But what was not mentioned, and is never mentioned in art reviews or by art historians, is that della Francesca's paintings, typical of other medieval and Renaissance artworks, are distortions and misrepresentations of biblical history. They fail to convey accurately who Jesus, his family, and community were, dedicated, Orthodox, practicing Jews. The 2 centerpieces of the Frick exhibit, Piero della Francesca's altarpiece painting, Virgin and Child enthroned with 4 angels, and the large polyptych Sant Agostino altarpiece, like the bulk of medieval and Renaissance paintings, transform working-class Galilean village Jews into fair-skinned, blonde, Northern European Latter-day Christians. They are depicted in palatial settings with Latter-day Christian saints, angels, and anachronistic artifacts, without a trace or hint of their Jewish identities. In my book, Jesus Uncensored, Restoring the Authentic Jew, I argue that these pervasive distortions established a powerful platform for anti-Semitism by feeding the illusion that Jesus was a Christian in contrast to the Jews, the others, who persecuted him. Fact is that Jews were the sole body of Jesus' followers, and they were all from the same Semitic tribe. I first realized the power of these distortions when I viewed Mary Magdalene encountering the risen Jesus by famed 15th century Italian Renaissance artist Fra Angelico. The fair-skinned blondes, Jesus and Mary Magdalene, with halos and shimmering light, seemed almost comical as representations of first-century Jewish Semites. I wondered how typical this painting was of other medieval and Renaissance paintings. To answer that question, I did a walking tour of the Renaissance galleries of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. What I discovered was so consistent and shocking that a brief commentary became a major chapter in my book. In every gallery, I was surrounded by paintings that featured a cast of characters in lavish settings that bore no resemblance to the world that Jesus and his followers inhabited. Every wall greeted me with blonde, fair-skinned European figures, portraits of John the Baptist and other contemporaries and disciples of Jesus, all with classical Roman features, some carrying crosses, and often they were embedded in anachronistic settings with latter-day Christian saints. For example, in Nerocchio da Landi's 15th century Madonna and Child with Saints Jerome and Mary Magdalene, Jesus, Madonna, and Mary Magdalene are noticeably milk white. The presence of a Christian saint completes a picture alien to its original Jewish setting. Nearby, Madonna and Child with Saints Francis and Clare by Cima da Conegliano not only features the anachronism of saints, but also depicts the uncircumcised infant Jesus holding a crucifix. Jews and Christians in the 1st century hated the cross. It was a reminder of the crucifixion of untold numbers of Jews. In fact, the cross didn't become a Christian symbol until the 4th century, when it was introduced by the pagan Roman Emperor Constantine for his military banners. That's why it's puzzling that in Bartolomé Esteban Murillo's 17th century painting, The Baptism of Christ, John the Baptist is holding a large crucifix staff as he baptizes Jesus. The Gospels tell us clearly that John only baptized Jews to purify them so they could receive the teachings of the Torah and prepare them for the coming of the Jewish Messiah. With exposure to this type of ubiquitous, fictitious imagery over the centuries, is it any wonder that so many people, Christians and Jews, still cling to false beliefs that Jesus was either born Christian or that he converted to Christianity, and that he launched a new religion? Compare the contents of these paintings with the descriptions of Jesus by biblical scholars. For example, Christian writer Jean Guiton, in his book Great Heresies in Church Councils, makes it clear that, quote, Jesus did not mean to found a new religion. In his historical humanity, Jesus was a devout Israelite, practicing the law to the full, from circumcision to Pesach, paying the half shekel for the temple. Jerusalem, the capital of his nation, was the city he loved. Jesus wept over it. Jesus had spiritually realized the germinal aspiration of his people, which was to raise the God of Israel. End quote. And here's how Anglican priest Bruce Chilton describes Jesus in his book, Rabbi Jesus. Quote, "It became clear to me that everything Jesus did was as a Jew, for Jews, and about Jews." End quote. And former Catholic priest James Carroll, author of Constantine's Sword, asks, quote, "If Jesus were alive today, would he be one of those fervent, black-hatted figures davening, praying that is, at the Western Wall, the remnant of the Jerusalem Temple?" End quote. These remarks are echoed by scores of other Christian and Jewish commentators who have affirmed that Jesus was dedicated to Judaism throughout his life. That explains why the term Jew appears 202 times in the New Testament, with 82 of those citations in the Gospels. The word Christian never appears in the Gospels, which span the life and ministry of Jesus. How could it? There was no such thing as Christianity during the life of Jesus. But that's not what the medieval and Renaissance artworks say. Art historians that I've spoken to give me the facile explanation, quote, "It was the Renaissance style to contemporize figures and settings," end quote. But a close scrutiny reveals that the so-called style argument doesn't hold up. You will not see Aristotle, Homer, or Agamemnon holding a cross or kneeling in a church surrounded by Christian saints. But Jesus and his family appear exclusively as Christians. The style argument is also not reflected in Renaissance paintings that demonized Jews. Look at Albrecht Dürer's 16th century painting, Christ Among the Doctors. The fair-skinned, ethereal-looking, reddish-blonde Jesus is portrayed in sharp contrast to the Jewish scholars who are dark, menacing, and ugly. One looks almost subhuman. The Christianization of art was also fueled by the nature of art as a business, a highly competitive business, as noted by New York Times art critic Holland Cotter. He said, "Painting in Renaissance Italy was no picnic. In artist-packed cities like Florence, competition for jobs, meaning benefactors, was fierce." End quote. To survive, artists had to give patrons what they wanted, and that meant total Christianization of artworks. Any inclusion of Judaism or suggestions that Jesus was a dedicated Jew would surely run you out of business, if not deliver you to the Inquisition. Regardless of the reason for the ethnic cleansing of Judaism from artworks, the cumulative effect of the distortions shaped and conditioned the way Christians throughout history, and even in modern times, have conceived of Christianity, Jesus, Jews, and Judaism. Images are powerful in shaping our perceptions. The contemporizing of artworks would not be that objectionable if the Jewish identity of Jesus and others in his circle were included. In the absence of Judaism, the contemporizing punctuated the distortions and falsifications of biblical history. For wherever Christians turned, in homes, palaces, churches, and even at celebrations, they were confronted with an inauthentic Jesus. Jesus, the Jew, was vaporized. We generally think of anti-Semitic art as explicit stereotypes of Jews, or what might be called anti-Semitism by commission, as was represented in a 2012 exhibit, The Jew and Anti-Semitic Art, at the Wolfson Museum in Israel. The more than 600 pieces of art that were assembled over a 30-year period by 92-year-old Judaica dealer Peter Ehrenthal are mostly from the 19th and 20th centuries, when anti-Semitic posters and pamphlets, as well as other publications and objects, proliferated. But these works are transparent and often comical. Only the most rabid anti-Semites would take them seriously. For example, contrast the hideous caricature of French financier, vineyard owner, art collector, horse breeder, and philanthropist Alphonse de Rothschild with an actual photograph of this elegant man. As I've noted, this is anti-Semitism by commission. But anti-Semitism by omission can be even more potent. The ethnic cleansing of Judaism and the Christianization of Jesus in medieval and Renaissance art established a classic setup for anti-Semitism. Separate, exaggerate differences, and then demonize. This subliminal conditioning shaped Christian views of Jews and reinforced the existing negative attitudes that they had. Then the coup de grace label, Christ killers, that the Jews killed Jesus, completed the persecution package. Looked at this way, medieval and Renaissance art can be seen as providing an important, overlooked missing link for understanding how anti-Semitism flourished throughout much of history. Renaissance artists added the magnificent and powerful new dimensions of realism and naturalism to painting, in contrast to earlier artificialism and primitivism. Unfortunately, the realism did not extend to representing figures as who they were in their real lives and in their actual settings. So the next time you stroll through the medieval and Renaissance galleries of a museum or view artworks from those periods in books and magazines, keep in mind the description of the real Jewish Jesus by Jean Guiton, Bruce Chilton, and James Carroll. It will be an entirely different experience. Also, check out the art exhibit that I'm organizing, Putting Judaism Back in the Picture Toward Healing the Christian-Jewish Divide. Artists are invited to submit new renditions of artworks and other formats that restore Jesus' Jewish identity. The aim is to heal the long-standing alienation of Christianity and Judaism by presenting the two sides of the Jesus story: Jesus, the faithful Jew, and Jesus, whose life and teachings inspired a new religion. The exhibit is in the spirit of Pope Francis's recent outreach to heal the ancient wounds and injustices. I believe that his goal will only be reached when Jews look at Jesus and see a faithful Jew, even if not accepted as the Messiah, and Christians look at an Orthodox Jew and see Jesus. For more information about healing the Christian-Jewish divide, visit BernardStarr.com. That's BernardStarr.com. And JewishJesusArt.com. That's JewishJesusArt.com.